I think it's really important in order to move forward that I spend a bit of time looking back and go right back to where it all started. And before I really dive into the last sort of 12 to 15 months of my life, I want to go right back to the very beginning, and I guess where I developed some of the bad habits and some of the poor lifestyle choices that led me to make this drastic change, and a couple of key dates that really stick at the forefront of my mind as real wake-up calls as needing to make a change. Before I go right back, I want you to remember a key date and a key number, and we'll revisit that right at the very end. So the number is 128.2. and the date is the 19th of April 2017. So I'll start off by saying simply, I love food. And I think everyone does to some extent, but I'm talking, I like really love food. And I suppose you combine that with a big appetite and not a lot of self-control, and you do get a bit of a cocktail for destruction. And this goes right back to when I was a kid and the poor habits I developed growing up. You know, I think back to when I was a kid, never liked fruit and veg as much, you know, and look, no one really does when they're a kid, but, you know, I was pretty bad. I had a lot of junk food. One thing that sticks out in my mind when I was probably 9 or 10 years old, you know, everyone remembers as a kid, you'd get home from school at like 3:30, 4 o'clock, and you'd want to smash down that after-school snack. You know, you'd be starving, you'd run straight to the pantry and grab whatever you could find. I went through a phase where I was in love with honey sandwiches, which you might think, yeah, that's not too bad. I would eat 4 honey sandwiches, 4 sandwiches every single day after school. That sort of sticks out in my mind. Another bad habit I picked up when I was probably about 12 or 13 was my obsession with Crunchy Nut cornflakes. Anyone who knows me through my high school years and my early adult life, I was a self-confessed Crunchy Nut. Which you might think, oh, you know, he has a bowl of Crunchy Nut every morning for breakfast. Well, yeah, that would have been great, except I would have not 1 bowl, but 2 bowls. And I'm talking big bowls, like massive, filled to the brim with milk. Yeah, not a really good, healthy way to start the day. And when you consider I'm doing that every single day of the week, yeah, not ideal. Fast forward to my high school years, and I'm sure everyone's had this guilty pleasure at one stage or another. The packs you get from the freezer at Coles or Woolies, you know, you get like the chicken nuggets or the chippies, the potato gems, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I became really reliant on them. You know, chuck them in the oven, 20 minutes, happy days, there's your lunch. I used to cook up a pack of those and take them to school every day, like a pack. And I'm sure, like, if you look on the back of it, it's like 4 or 5, 6, 7 servings in a whole pack, but that was my lunch, just my lunch. I used to have the really sugary orange juice as well. I'm sure all my mates from high school are watching this and laughing now and thinking, haha, yeah, I remember Matt with the orange juice and the chippies every day in his little lunchbox, well, big lunchbox because it was a big feed. Yeah, I guess it just, that sort of set the scene for the bad habits that I had. Kicking on to my early adult life, and you've got a young guy with a big appetite, a bit of money behind him now he's got a car. Again, recipe for destruction. So, you know, I had bad habits that carried all the way through. You know, I didn't really stop myself from eating junk food. I would stop at Macca's or KFC or whatever whenever I felt like it. My idea of eating healthy was going, and again, I'm sure everyone's done this at one stage or another. You go to Subway and you say, hey, I'm eating Subway, that's healthy, right? It doesn't matter that you've got a foot-long Italian herbs and cheese, cheddar cheese, chicken schnitzel sub with garlic aioli and, you know, very limited salad, but hey, I'm at Subway, so it's healthy, eat fresh, right? Throw in a lot of drinking through my early adult years and, you know, sugary drinks and all the rest of that crap that we all drink when we're 18, 19, 20. Yeah, it's not a good lifestyle, and I guess it was always masked for me when I was in high school and in my younger years. I was playing a lot of sport. You know, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was cricket training 4 afternoons a week, playing 3 games a weekend, and look, I was always big, but probably masked a little bit by the fact I was quite active. Moved forward to sort of when I came out of high school and stopped playing as much sport, and it really started to show, and it was time for a change. I suppose it really started to hit home for me in the last few years, now that I've owned my own home and I've had control of my meals and my finances in terms of what I'm buying and what I'm eating. I would find myself making a really big meal, say like a chili con carne was a big favourite of mine, and I'd make a massive batch of this stuff and, you know, have heaps of leftovers and think, not, oh, wicked, I can take some of those for lunch the next day, but, oh, there's leftovers that I can eat tonight at 9:30, 10 o'clock if I get peckish, which I say if I got peckish, it was every night. I was having that 4th meal, that after hours 4th meal. And, you know, I'm sure everyone, again, has had the guilty pleasure of a chocolate bar or a handful of chips or some nuts or something after hours. For me to have a whole nother meal was something completely else. And if that wasn't available, I'd find myself wanting to go up to the shops and get something. A really bad example, Jazz and I developed a really unhealthy obsession with the connoisseur cookies and cream ice cream. You get the litre tub from Coles. We would drive up there at ungodly hours, buy a tub, and I'd find myself saying to Jazz, you know, eat as much as you like, and then I'll have my serving, and knowing full well she wouldn't eat anywhere near as much as me. She would maybe, you know, even if she had like a quarter of it, well, hey, she'd give the rest to me, and then I'd polish it off. I suppose I had no form of self-control. You know, we would go to Little Caesars and buy pizza, and to get some variety, we would buy 2 pizzas, half and half, so 4 different types of pizza across 2 large pizzas. I would make sure that was gone. If it was in front of me, I would just eat it, not because I was hungry, but just because I would eat it. Another really poor example of my nutrition choices was my obsession with bread. I'm sure you've all seen the big Vienna loaves you can buy at the supermarket. Well, I would buy one of those with the intention of, you know, chicken and avocado roll or something like that. I would cut the crust off and chomp that down while I'm making my roll, and then I would use almost half the loaf to make this massive big sandwich. I'd polish that off, and then I'd look at the rest of the loaf. It might be, you know, this big, and I think, hey, you know, most people probably look at that and go, it's 2 sandwiches worth. I'd look at it and go, it's not worth keeping. So I ended up polishing that off as well. Before you know, a whole Vienna loaf gone over the course of a lunch. When you put all this together and you tally up the run sheet I've developed of poor choices over the journey, it doesn't make for good listening. Unfortunately, I've got no one to blame for it but myself. You know, I've made those poor choices and I had to deal with that, and there was definitely some self-loathing there, but I couldn't sort of stop myself from making those choices because I just love food. And so I guess it took some really, really key wake-up moments to bring about a call to action and help me turn things around. I guess since I was old enough to ever really care about it, I've always said to myself I would lose some weight and get into shape for my wedding day. And I guess the 29th of October was the day that became a reality. The day Jazz said yes. You know, there was a wedding on the cards, so I had that sort of at the back of my mind. It was also the day that I tried on a 2XL shirt, and it was so tight, it was unbelievable, and I was horrified. I had to throw on a 3XL and really hated myself. That was a real big wake-up call. Unfortunately, it wasn't a big enough wake-up call because I kind of knew, hey, wedding's 18 months away, I've got all the time in the world. I suppose to tie this all up and bring it full circle, I'll come back to that date that I mentioned at the start, the 19th of April 2017, and that was the day that I officially started to turn my life around, and I've got to thank 2 people for I guess being the kickstarter to helping me make a change and improve my life. Their names are James Mooney and Monique Pereira, as she was then, or now James and Monique Mooney. On the 19th of April, they sent a message to their bridal party saying, hey, of which I was the best man, saying, hey, we're going suit shopping in a couple of weeks, are you available? To which I don't think I've ever been more terrified in my life. I'd always planned to lose the weight, but, you know, kept procrastinating and putting it off, but 2 weeks to lose some weight and get into a suit, to stand up in front of everyone with a whole bunch of good-looking people and be the fat guy in the group was terrifying. To make things worse, I jumped on the scales that day, and the number that came back to me was absolutely gutting, literally. 128.2 kilos, of which I had no idea it was that bad, and I almost broke down at the time because I thought, how have I let myself get to this? Not only this, I've done this to myself, and I now have 2 weeks to try and get better. At the end of the day, I have to thank those guys for kicking my butt into gear. I suppose at that point I was left with 2 choices. I could have sulked and whinged and said life's not fair and nah, 2 weeks not long enough, I can't lose the weight, why bother even trying? Or I could have busted my gut, literally, and done as much as I could with the time I had in the hopes that I could at least, you know, get into some form of shape. Which I guess is a good segue to end this one, and where I'll lead into my next video, where I'll start to talk about what I did initially in those first few weeks and months to try and lose the weight and change my lifestyle, some of the mistakes I made and the challenges I faced, and yeah, I look forward to getting stuck into that. I think it was really important just to go back and go through history a bit and talk about sort of what brought me to this point in time. So I guess you guys knew what I was sort of dealing with in terms of having to change and the habits I was having to break. There was a lot of bad ones there, and certainly ones I'm not proud of, but ones that I can look back on now Who knows, maybe one day I'll have a bowl of crunchy nut cornflakes or a honey sandwich. Until then, thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate you sticking with me through this. I know I tend to ramble a bit. I really intend to get stuck in pretty deep with this stuff. I don't think I can do it justice with just, you know, 1 or 2 videos. This is only the sort of second of what I plan to be many videos covering a whole bunch of stuff. So, appreciate you sticking with me, guys. Until next time,